Good morning, friends. We are here to discuss English as a language and English as literature. You know, literature is reflection of life. You must have heard so many definitions about literature. Literature is life because whatever that happens in life gets reflected into literature. Even in the past, literature used to be in the form of poetry. Later on, as the days passed, literature began to appear in different forms like drama, fiction, criticism. Poetry is the original, and all forms have been reflected through poetry only. And that's why my main focus today to speak with you is poetry with special reference to romanticism. And that is why, you know, romanticism is a movement that began in 19th century with the publication of the famous critical treatise written by William Wordsworth in the year 1798. He published his book called Lyrical Ballads, which is known as Manifesto of English Literature. Whatever he intends to bring in poetry, whatever ideas newly he wanted to propagate, he has categorically stated in his critical treatise called Lyrical Ballads. Because the Lyrical Ballads is the result of French Revolution. When French Revolution began, William Wordsworth was simply in 18 years age, and he has written a poem thereon called French Revolution. French Revolution brought many ideas in the mind of the people. That French Revolution would bring democracy, and the fruits of the democracy shall be equality, liberty, and fraternity. Now this democratic spirit, which was seen at political level throughout the world began to dream that there shall be a democratic government and the end of the monarchy and the dictatorship. Accordingly, it happened so. But the reflection of French Revolution was seen even in literature, and that's why Wordsworth, who opposed those neoclassical ideas which were deeply rooted in poetry, Wordsworth wanted to eradicate them. And therefore he said that poetry is a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. If you analyze this definition by Wordsworth, you will see that the dictatorial voice from the field of literature, he completely opposed, and he wanted to have those democratic ideas even in poetry. And that's why, if you look into the poetry written by Wordsworth, you will see that those were the days when a piece of poem used to be composed upon the staging of a queen, prince and princess. Their whims and fancies and their idiosyncratic qualities could become the subject of poetry. But the sorrows and the sufferings of a common man could not become the subject of poetry. But Wordsworth battered down all these walls, and he made poetry open for common people. And that's why Wordsworth categorically asserted in his treatise that poet is not a messenger of God sent on the earth. Poet is a man who speaks to men. He speaks in common man's language, and that's why metrical composition is not required for composing poetry. A common man's language, simple and lucid language, could become the way of communication, and that is why Wordsworth's poetry is composed. If you look at the characters which are delineated by Wordsworth in his poetry, we have a reverie of poor Susan, then we have Leech Gatherer, we have a solitary reaper, we have Michael, we have Laudamia. These characters are the men of soil. They are not coming from ivory towers. They are not coming from royal families. They are coming from common man. And that's why common man could become the center of poetry at the hands of Wordsworth. And this credit goes to Lyrical Ballads, which was published in 1798. And thereafter, the very spirit of poetry completely changed. Along with William Wordsworth, we know he has his past friend, S.T. Coleridge. Both of them started together, but later on they got separated. And S.T. Coleridge started composing his separate ideas in his critical treatise called Biographia Literaria. And there in Biographia Literaria, Wordsworth had a different notion about nature. He was of the opinion that nature soothes man. If you are in your dejected and pessimistic mood, better to go into the contact of nature. Nature will take your sorrow and will offer you joy. But S.T. Coleridge has his different opinion about this. He said that nature does not soothe man. It is not nature that affects the mood of man, but it is the mood of the man that affects the nature. Here is the difference in opinion as far as their attitude to nature is concerned. And Lyrical Ballads and Biographia Literaria, both the critical treatise came into existence in the analyzing romantic poetry. Along with Wordsworth and Coleridge, we have next name, that is of P.B. Shelley. And Shelley is a man who is popularly known for his poem called Ode to the West Wind. Shelley believes in blatant optimism. He is of the opinion that what the last line of his Ode to the West Wind reads, that if winter comes, can spring be far behind. Whatever ideas he has highlighted in the poem Ode to the West Wind, the last line, which is the essence of the complete thought, that is, if winter comes, even today we are facing the dark period of life, but it does not remain for a long time. Very soon the period of darkness will get subside and there will be emergence of a dawn. That is what P.B. Shelley has said in his poem Ode to the West Wind. And the third name from romantic poetry that comes up, John Keats, in his poem Ode to Grecian Urn. You know, John Keats is of the opinion that art is superior and human life is inferior. In order to explain this idea, he has beautifully painted stanzas, and in each stanza we have heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Looks at a picture, looks at a painting on the Grecian urn, and he is rotating it and looking at the different pictures and analyzing them one after another. Both under the shade of a tree, a lover and beloved, both of them are sitting and they are embracing and they are about to lock into a kiss, but they are apart. Centuries together have passed away, but the lovers have not crossed the limit. They are still in the same position, and for not materializing and consuming that kiss, they are not feeling sorry for it. It would not have been possible in the real life, which is possible only in art. And that is why the Grecian urn on which the picture is of, a person is playing upon a flute, and the pipe which the tunes are coming out, and his cheeks are swollen, but the tunes are not heard to the carnal, to the physical ear of a man, which can be Wordsworth. Keats is of the opinion that it can be heard by that internal ear, and that is how sweet music is more than what we listen music in our day-to-day life. This is how romantic poetry, which is known for its liberalism, supernatural elements, supernaturalism that is predominantly being used, lurk of medievalism, then the reflection of nature and subjectivity. These are some of the important features of this romantic poetry. And that's why in a nutshell, poetry which was composed in 17th century, known as neoclassical poetry, that neoclassical poetry ceases, and there is emergence of this great book called Lyrical Ballads by Wordsworth, which pervades thereafter throughout in literature, and poetry becomes a vehicle of common man, common man's sorrows and sufferings, then afflictions of Margaret, then stolen boat, then the solitary reaper. Such poems were composed by Wordsworth. They underline the principle that poetry is not something which is controlled by a rich and upper class, but a common man also can become the subject of poetry. This is what we can very well go into the detailed account and see that how poetry has changed its language, its imagery and its aura, and this is how poetry becomes very popular in the hands of these 4 or 5 great poets like William Wordsworth, S.T. Coleridge, P.B. Shelley, John Keats and to some extent Lord Byron. Thank you.